Hello, students. As you all know, since last week we had been reading and interpreting Shelley's poem Ode to the West Wind, and we could do first three stanzas where Shelley talked about west wind's activity and effects upon earth, air, and ocean. Today, let's move on to the final fourth and the fifth stanza. If I were a dead leaf, thou mightest bear. If I were a swift cloud to fly with thee, a wave to pant beneath thy power and share the impulse of thy strength, only less free than thou, O uncontrollable. If even I were as in my boyhood, and could be the comrade of thy wanderings over heaven, as then, when to outstrip thy sky speed scarce seemed a vision, I would never have striven as thus with thee in prayer in my sore need. So, in this fourth stanza, the poem becomes subjective when Shelley starts to describe his own wishes more clearly. All this while he was describing what the west wind as a power of nature was doing over earth, in the sky, and in the ocean. Now the poet comes back to himself and addressing the west wind, he says, If I were a dead leaf, thou mightest bear. If at all it is possible, if I were a dead leaf, thou mightest bear. So you might lift me up. If I were a dead leaf, so you might lift me up. If I were a swift cloud to fly with thee, or a swift cloud who could fly along, or a wave to pant beneath thy power and share the impulse of thy strength. A wave of the ocean that would feel your power and share the impulse of thy strength, feel the intensity of your strength. Only less free than thou, O uncontrollable. If it would happen, it would make him almost as free as the uncontrollable west wind itself. So, in the first three lines of this fourth stanza, Shelley combines the images of leaves, cloud, and the sea waves described in the earlier three stanzas, and he imagines to feel the same powerful force of the west wind that the leaves, clouds, and the sea waves feel. If even I were as in my boyhood and could be the comrade of thy wanderings over heaven. If even I were as in my boyhood and could be the comrade of thy wanderings over heaven, and a sense of longing and craving for old times is apparent in these lines. And Shelley is wishing here for his lost spirit and energy when he says, If even I were as in my boyhood. If only he wishes he could at least be as he was once used to be in his boyhood, in his childhood, and could be the comrade of thy wanderings. So, he would be a companion. Comrade means a companion, a partner of the west wind of its wanderings over heaven, over earth. As then, when to outstrip thy sky speed scarce seemed a vision. When he was young, the poet felt like it was possible for him to be faster and more powerful than the west wind itself. Scarce seemed a vision. At young age, it was hardly appeared a vision, a dream. It was possible for him back then, but now he cannot do so. He is losing his energy, his spirit. I would never have striven as thus with thee in prayer in my sore need. And if I could have that energy, if I could have that power again, he would not be appealing, he wouldn't be praying to the west wind he is doing, as he is doing now for its help in his sore need, in his suffering. Oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I fall upon the thorns of life. I bleed. The poet is self pitying, pitying his own situation, his plight in the present times. And he says, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I fall upon the thorns of life. Life has been a road of thorns, not of roses for him. He had faced so many troubles personal and professional, that he is bleeding, and this bleeding is not, he's not bleeding physically, but emotionally. He is bleeding inside. His spirit is bleeding. You know, Shelley somewhere had this belief that that he was misunderstood by his contemporaries, by the people of his times. Therefore, a sense of loneliness, a sense of dissatisfaction overcame him. And this is quite clear and explicit in these lines when he says, oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud, I fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed. A heavy weight of ours has chained and bowed one too like thee, tameless and swift and proud. A heavy weight of ours, that means problems, personal and professional, that he faced in his life has chained him, has made him weak. He has been chained and he has been bowed, one too like thee. The poet says, one too like thee, O west wind, once I used to be like you, tameless. Tameless means free and uncontrollable, swift and proud. And that's how he used to be in his childhood. But now he is bleeding. He says he has been chained, he has been bowed, one too like thee. Once I used to be like you, but now the situation has completely been changed. Now, this is the last and final stanza, final section of this ode. He says, make me thy lyre, even as the forest is. What if my leaves are falling like its own? The tumult of thy mighty harmonies will take from both a deep autumnal tone, sweet though in sadness. And finally, in the fifth and the last stanza, the poet requests Westwind to turn him into its lyre. Lyre, a sort of musical instrument with strings, and it produces sweet sound when the wind blows through it, just as a modern day wind chime produces sound. And here Shelley describes himself as a lyre upon whom the wind will play its own music, as it plays upon the forest, even as the forest is. What if my leaves are falling like its own? The tumult of thy mighty harmonies will take from both a deep autumnal tone. He will be the instrument, and the wind will play its own music, just as it does in the branches of the trees in the forest. And what if my leaves are falling like its own? What if the poet is losing his leaves, his spirit, just like the forest? It does not matter. The tumult of thy mighty harmonies will take from both a deep autumnal tone. The wind, using him as its lyre, will produce mighty harmonies, means strong melodious music. The west wind will be the musician who can take out a deep autumnal tone from him and make harmonious music, sweet though in sadness, and the music thus produced may be sweet, but it could be sad. Be thou, spirit fierce, my spirit, be thou me, impetuous one. The poet wishes to be united in the fierce spirit of the west wind, and he asks the west wind to become him. Be thou, spirit fierce, my spirit. He wishes to be united in the fierce spirit of the west wind, the impetuous one. One impetuous means one who is reckless, one who is violent and powerful. He wishes to unite with the power of nature, the west wind itself. Drive my dead thoughts over the universe like withered leaves to quicken a new birth. And by the incantation of this verse, scatter as from an unextinguished hearth, ashes and sparks, my words among mankind. Be through my lips to unawakened earth, the trumpet of a prophecy. O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? Drive my dead thoughts over the universe. The poet asked the west wind to carry his dead thoughts over the world, just as it carries like withered leaves to quicken a new birth, just as it carries the dry leaves to quicken a new birth, to make possible the regeneration. He is comparing his dead thoughts to the dead leaves. And by the incantation of this verse, scatter as from an unextinguished hearth. And the poet here metaphorically compares himself to an unextinguished hearth, a fireplace with ashes and sparks. The poet thinks himself as a fire that hasn't gone out yet. It still has some spark in it. The poet still has some unburnt power in him. And he requests the west wind to spread his ideas, his words of this verse, of this poem, to scatter among mankind. His words are the ashes and sparks that the wind will blow out in the world. Be through my lips to unawakened earth, the trumpet of a prophecy. He asks the wind to use his mouth as a trumpet through which the wind will blow its own prophecy, its own message or foretelling to the sleeping world. Shelley wishes to convey his ideas, his thoughts, his philosophy in his poetry, which the world would read and by which the world would be awakened, would be renewed, when he says, "Be through my lips to unawakened earth the trumpet of a prophecy." The wind will be the trumpet through which he will spread his ideas, his messages, his philosophy. O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? And he wishes to renew the world, and he seeks the help of the west wind in his purpose, in this regeneration, in this renewal. And in the last line he says, "O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind?" The poet ends by asking a question. If winter comes, can spring be far behind? Winter is symbolic of death, gloominess, despair, and hopelessness. And spring suggests like birth, life, birth, beauty, and color. So he is asking, if there is winter, If there is hopelessness, if there is sorrow and grief, then there is a spring also, a spring of hope, a spring of happiness. What Shelley means to say here that this is a cycle, and we do not see the cycle in seasons only. There is a cycle in our lives too. If there is a death, if there is decay and destruction now, that means a rebirth, a regeneration is around the corner. So the poet is being optimistic when he says, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? These are very famous lines of his poems, of this ode. And he is hopeful. He ends this poem on an optimistic note, and he is hopeful for what the future could bring for him, for nature, and for the world in general. So, students, with this we end our discussion of this ode. I hope the poem is clear to you. Thank you so much.